you know, cars are designed over a many-year process, many years in advance. So some of this just happened that the new...
If you hate repair bills, long-term reliability matters more than any spec sheet. While many modern pickups promise dependability, real ownership often brings added complexity and costly repairs. A few trucks, however, were engineered with durability as the priority, not features or headlines. This list breaks down 5 trucks worth buying if you want endurance, simplicity, and low-drama ownership. Ford F-150. At number 5 sits the Ford F-150 from the early 2000s, equipped with the 4.6-liter V8, a machine built in an era when restraint mattered more than headlines. The 4.6-liter modular V8 was never designed to chase big numbers. It was designed to survive heat, neglect, long idle hours, and steady load without drama. Cast iron blocks, modest compression, and simple port fuel injection kept internal stress low. That restraint translated into engines that routinely crossed 300,000 miles with nothing more than routine oil changes, cooling system care, and basic ignition service. In fleets, municipalities, and private driveways, these engines built a reputation not through marketing, but through repetition. The early 2000s F-150 wrapped that engine in a chassis that favored repairability over novelty. Steel frames were thick and predictable. Suspension components were simple and widely shared across trims. Rear-wheel drive layouts avoided the complexity that ages poorly, while four-wheel drive variants still relied on mechanical systems that could be serviced without specialized tools. When something wore out, it was usually one component at a time, not a cascading failure buried behind electronics. Scale matters in reliability, and few trucks were produced at the scale of this one. Ford built these trucks in enormous numbers, which meant parts availability never became an issue. Salvage yards filled with compatible components. Aftermarket suppliers refined replacements for decades. Mechanics learned their patterns early and never forgot them. That ecosystem reduces downtime and cost, 2 factors that matter far more than aesthetics once mileage stacks up. Emotionally, this truck earns trust because it behaves predictably. It starts in the heat. It idles without complaint. It hauls without protest, as long as expectations stay realistic. There is no sense that it is one sensor away from a limp mode spiral. Instead, there is a feeling of mechanical honesty, where cause leads to effect in a way that can be diagnosed and addressed. That predictability lowers anxiety, which is an underrated form of value. Market behavior tells the same story. These trucks do not collapse in value because demand never disappears. They trade hands quietly, often locally, because people who understand them keep them. When they do sell, it is rarely because of catastrophic failure. More often, it is because the owner moved on while the truck kept going. That pattern explains why high-mileage examples still command respect, even when paint fades and interiors show their age. Performance was never the headline, yet it remains adequate in every meaningful sense. The 4.6-liter V8 delivers smooth torque without stressing the drivetrain. Transmissions paired with it were tuned conservatively, favoring longevity over sharp shifts. Axles and differentials were sized for steady work, not marketing specs. The result is a powertrain that ages evenly, instead of one component outpacing the others and creating weak links. Ownership stories tend to converge around the same themes: long stretches without repairs, familiar sounds that never change, maintenance that feels optional rather than urgent. These patterns create confidence over time, not excitement. And that confidence is exactly what keeps these trucks relevant decades later. This truck also benefits from timing. It arrived before cylinder deactivation systems, before turbocharging became common in half-ton trucks, and before software layers multiplied. Fewer systems mean fewer interactions, and fewer interactions mean fewer surprises over time. That simplicity is not accidental. It reflects a design philosophy that assumed trucks would be kept, worked, and repaired rather than replaced. And if this level of durability came from restraint, wait until you see what happens when restraint meets smaller size in the next rank. Toyota Tacoma. Silence is the first thing people notice after spending time with this truck. because nothing unexpected ever interrupts the drive. At number 4 stands the Toyota Tacoma, equipped with the 2.7-liter four-cylinder, a configuration that built its reputation by refusing to participate in the horsepower race. This truck never tried to dominate conversations, spec sheets, or parking lots. Instead, it quietly accumulated mileage while everything around it chased attention. That absence of drama is not accidental. It is engineered, reinforced, and sustained over time. The 2.7-liter four-cylinder traces its roots to an era when engines were designed to tolerate abuse rather than impress reviewers. Thick cylinder walls, conservative compression ratios, and a long history of incremental refinement gave it an unusual tolerance for heat, load, and neglect. This engine does not rush. It spins at modest revolutions, produces usable torque without strain, and avoids the internal pressures that shorten service life. Rather than delivering peaks, it delivers consistency. Over time, that restraint becomes visible in odometers rolling past 300,000 miles without ceremony or surprise. That longevity is not accidental, nor is it dependent on perfect care. Many examples reach extreme mileage under ordinary ownership conditions, with maintenance that is consistent but unremarkable. Oil changes happen, coolant gets replaced, belts and hoses age out naturally. The engine responds not by deteriorating unpredictably, but by continuing to function as expected. Mechanical forgiveness is one of the most underrated qualities in any vehicle, and this power plant has it in abundance. The Tacoma as a platform reinforces that same durability-first philosophy. The frame is stout without being excessive, designed to absorb work rather than advertise capability. Suspension geometry prioritizes stability over sharp response. Steering components favor longevity rather than precision. Nothing feels fragile because nothing was optimized to the edge of its tolerances. Even when driven on rough roads or loaded repeatedly, the truck never feels like it is being pushed beyond what it was designed to handle. Driveline layout further reflects this mindset. Rear-wheel drive configurations avoid unnecessary complexity, and the four-cylinder engine places less stress on transmissions, differentials, mounts, and axles than larger power plants ever could. Lower torque output is often framed as a weakness, but in this context, it becomes an asset. Stress is cumulative. Reducing it at the source preserves everything downstream. The Tacoma benefits from that mechanical math every mile it travels. Confidence builds through consistency, and this truck is built to repeat itself. Cold starts sound the same as warm ones. Idle remains steady regardless of mileage. Throttle response stays predictable as years pass. These small consistencies accumulate into trust. Trust changes ownership behavior. When a vehicle behaves reliably, owners stop anticipating failure. They drive without listening for warning signs. They stop negotiating with the machine. That calm, once established, tends to persist. Market behavior tells a revealing story. Demand remains strong, not because these trucks are rare, but because supply rarely increases through failure. Tacomas exit ownership cycles through choice, not breakdown. When they do change hands, it is often within communities that already understand what they are getting. That informed demand explains why resale values stay elevated and why even neglected examples are still worth reviving. A vehicle that remains mechanically relevant retains value even when cosmetics fade. Performance, in this context, is defined differently. Acceleration is not urgent, but it is sufficient. Highway speeds arrive without stress. Steady cruising remains calm and unremarkable, which is exactly the point. More importantly, the engine never feels like it is working at its limit. That margin matters over hundreds of thousands of miles. Components that operate below their maximum thresholds wear more slowly, interact more gently, and fail less often. The Tacoma's reputation is built on that mechanical reality rather than on impressions formed during short test drives. Maintenance patterns reinforce the narrative. Oil changes matter more than modifications. Cooling system health matters more than accessories. When issues arise, they tend to be singular and understandable rather than layered and confusing. Sensors fail individually. Gaskets age gradually. Repairs follow logic instead of guesswork. That clarity reduces both cost and frustration over time. Ownership feels manageable rather than investigative, which encourages people to keep the truck longer instead of replacing it prematurely. There is also a psychological advantage to this configuration that is often overlooked. Expectations remain grounded. No one mistakes this truck for a performance machine, which means it is rarely driven as one. Loads stay reasonable. Towing stays modest. Usage aligns naturally with design, and alignment extends lifespan. Many vehicles fail because they are constantly asked to exceed their intended role. This Tacoma avoids that trap by making its role unmistakable from the beginning. Environmental tolerance plays a role as well. These trucks live in places where vehicles are tested daily: heat, dust, cold, salt, elevation. Yet they continue to operate without protest. That resilience encourages owners to keep them even when cosmetic wear sets in. A truck that still works rarely feels obsolete, no matter how it looks. Function delays replacement far more effectively than novelty ever could. Timing amplified all of this. This engine and platform matured before turbocharging, cylinder deactivation, and layered software became common. Fewer systems mean fewer interactions. Fewer interactions mean fewer surprises. That simplicity compounds over years, especially as vehicles age beyond their original warranty horizon. Where complexity multiplies risk, simplicity contains it. What feels basic early in life often feels brilliant later. Calling this truck slow misunderstands its purpose. Speed was never the goal. Its value lies in endurance, not excitement. Endurance is what keeps repair bills low and confidence high. It is what allows owners to plan years ahead instead of reacting month to month. In a market that increasingly prioritizes short-term impressions, the Tacoma represents a longer view. The true strength of this truck is not found in any single component. It exists in the alignment between engineering, expectations, and behavior. Each reinforces the other. Design encourages restraint. Restraint reduces stress. Reduced stress extends lifespan. That loop is difficult to break. And that is exactly why these trucks remain on the road long after others quietly disappear. Longevity did not require power here, but the next truck shows how durability changes when strength joins the conversation. If this list already saved you from a future repair bill, tap like, so more people see it. Subscribe for the next breakdown, and tell us which truck you trust to cross 300,000 miles without draining your wallet. Nissan Frontier. While other trucks chased reinvention, this one quietly kept doing the same job year after year. At number 3 sits the Nissan Frontier, powered by the 4.0-liter 5.6, a pickup that existed outside the spotlight while competitors chased reinvention. As rivals refreshed designs, layered on technology, and steadily raised prices, this truck stayed largely the same, quietly accumulating miles instead of headlines. That stagnation was not a flaw, it was an advantage. And over time, it became the Frontier's defining strength. The 4.0-liter 5.6 traces its lineage to an era when Nissan prioritized robustness over refinement. This engine was never meant to feel delicate, advanced, or impressive on paper. It was built to survive heat cycles, heavy loads, and long service intervals without protest. Thick castings, conservative tuning, and generous cooling capacity gave it a tolerance for abuse that many modern power plants simply do not attempt. It does not rely on forced induction, cylinder deactivation, or fragile efficiency strategies. It relies on margin, and margin is what allows mechanical systems to age without drama. That margin reveals itself slowly, then unmistakably, over time. Fleet-operated Frontiers have been documented crossing 250,000 to 300,000 miles, while retaining original engines and transmissions. The same pattern appears across private ownership. Failures tend to arrive late and individually, not early and in clusters. When something eventually wears out, it is usually understandable and repairable rather than sudden and catastrophic. That predictability changes the ownership experience in subtle but meaningful ways. Maintenance feels planned instead of reactive. Ownership feels stable instead of anxious. The Frontier's chassis reinforces the same philosophy. Frame construction favors thickness over lightness. prioritizing durability instead of marginal efficiency gains. Suspension components are straightforward and robust, chosen for endurance rather than sharp handling. Steering systems emphasize resilience over feedback. The result is a truck that feels composed even as mileage climbs. There is no sense that the platform is being pushed beyond its comfort zone. Instead, everything feels slightly underworked, and underworked components tend to last far longer than those operating at their limits. Confidence builds through repetition, and this truck excels at repetition. Cold starts sound the same in winter and summer. Idle remains steady long after most engines begin to develop quirks. Throttle response stays predictable as years pass. These small consistencies accumulate into trust. Trust lowers stress, and lower stress fundamentally changes how people interact with a vehicle. When confidence replaces caution, ownership becomes calmer and less reactive. Drivers stop listening for failure and start assuming continuity, which is rare in modern vehicles. Market behavior exposes another layer of the Frontier's appeal. Because it never became a cultural icon, resale values remained restrained. That restraint created opportunity. While other trucks inflated beyond reason, this one stayed accessible. Yet accessibility did not come at the cost of durability. In many cases, it enhanced it. Trucks purchased without hype are often used as intended, rather than pushed to perform roles they were never designed to fill. That alignment between design and usage quietly preserves mechanical health over time. Designed to produce ample torque for real work, this V6 handles its duties without stressing the drivetrain. Acceleration feels confident rather than rushed. Highway merging happens without advanced planning. When towing is kept reasonable, the experience never feels abusive. That balance matters. Engines pushed to their limits wear quickly. Engines that operate comfortably below those limits tend to endure. The Frontier lives in that comfortable margin, where effort never feels strained, and longevity becomes a byproduct of restraint. Maintenance patterns further support the narrative. Oil changes remain straightforward. Cooling systems are robust and forgiving. Sensors and electronics exist, but they do not dominate the ownership experience. Diagnosing issues rarely feels like chasing ghosts through layers of software. Problems announce themselves clearly, and solutions follow logic rather than speculation. That clarity keeps repair costs contained and downtime minimal. Owners fix what is necessary instead of guessing what might be wrong. There is also an overlooked psychological component to this truck's longevity. Because it was never positioned as aspirational, expectations stayed realistic. It was not treated like a luxury item or a performance machine. It was treated as transportation and work equipment. That mindset affects behavior more than most people realize. Loads stay sensible. Driving stays measured. Abuse is rare because there is nothing to prove. Over time, that restraint preserves the machine just as effectively as any engineering choice. Timing amplified all of this. The Frontier matured before software integration exploded across vehicle systems. Fewer control modules mean fewer points of failure. Fewer points of failure mean fewer surprises as years accumulate. This simplicity does not feel outdated when repairs are rare. It feels intentional. In an era where complexity often masquerades as progress, the Frontier's refusal to evolve rapidly became its quiet advantage. Calling this truck outdated misunderstands its success. It remained relevant precisely because it refused to change. While others chased novelty and paid the price in complexity, this one stayed familiar, serviceable, and dependable. Longevity does not always come from innovation. Sometimes it comes from knowing when to stop. And as solid as this one is, the next truck shows what happens when longevity meets sheer scale. Chevrolet Silverado 1500. This truck comes from a time when strength was prioritized without apology. At number 2 stands the Chevrolet Silverado 1500 from the pre-2007 era, powered by the 5.3-liter V8. A combination that emerged during a brief window when durability still outweighed efficiency mandates. This was the moment before complexity accelerated, and the results are still visible in trucks that continue to work quietly decades later. The 5.3-liter V8 from this period was engineered with an emphasis on balance. Output was strong enough to handle real loads, yet conservative enough to avoid constant stress. Cast iron blocks, straightforward valve train design, and traditional port fuel injection created an engine that tolerated heat cycles and mileage without internal drama. This power plant did not rely on fragile efficiency tricks or experimental systems. It relied on proven fundamentals, and fundamentals age well. Evidence of that longevity appears everywhere these trucks operate. High-mileage Silverados from this era routinely cross 300,000 miles with original engines still performing daily tasks. Oil consumption remains manageable. Compression stays even. Cooling systems, when maintained, hold steady. The engine does not feel like it is surviving despite its design. It feels like it is surviving because of it. That distinction matters. The platform surrounding the engine reinforces the same philosophy. Frame rails are thick and forgiving. Suspension components are substantial rather than delicate. Steering systems favor durability over razor-sharp feedback. The drivetrain as a whole was sized to tolerate work, not just pass certification tests. Components age together instead of one system outrunning the others and becoming a weak link. That uniform aging reduces catastrophic failures and extends usable life. This truck builds trust through consistency. Nothing changes unexpectedly. Its sounds, responses, and behavior remain familiar over time, creating a sense of mechanical honesty and confidence for the owner. Scale amplifies reliability, and this truck existed at enormous scale. General Motors produced vast numbers of these Silverados, creating an ecosystem that supports them long after production ended. Parts availability remains strong. Knowledge remains widespread. Aftermarket solutions matured over decades. When a truck can be repaired easily and affordably, it stays on the road longer, regardless of age. That infrastructure is an invisible but critical part of durability. Market behavior reflects this reality. These trucks rarely vanish from circulation due to mechanical failure. They disappear because rust claims the body or because the owner moves on. When they do sell, it is often as functioning work vehicles rather than restoration projects. That pattern explains why even worn examples still command interest. The underlying mechanical confidence remains intact. The 5.3-liter V8 provides smooth, usable torque without pushing the limits of the drivetrain. Acceleration feels composed rather than aggressive. Highway cruising remains relaxed. Loads, when kept reasonable, do not feel abusive. That moderation preserves components. Engines that are constantly stressed wear quickly. Engines that operate with margin tend to last. Maintenance trends reinforce the pattern. Regular oil changes matter more than upgrades. Cooling system health matters more than accessories. When sensors fail, they do so individually. Electronics exist, but they do not dominate the ownership experience. Diagnostics remain logical, repairs remain understandable. That clarity keeps repair bills predictable instead of volatile. Timing plays a crucial role in this truck's reputation. This generation matured before widespread cylinder deactivation systems complicated valve trains. It arrived before turbocharging reshaped half-ton trucks. It existed before software layers multiplied across every subsystem. Fewer systems mean fewer interactions. Fewer interactions mean fewer opportunities for cascading. Failure. That simplicity compounds over time. Often labeled outdated, these trucks remain relevant because they were designed for long-term ownership, not quick replacement. Built with durability, simplicity, and repairability in mind, their conservative engineering choices proved resilient over time. What once seemed old-fashioned became dependable, as usefulness outlasted trends and endurance quietly won. And if this truck represents the last great moment before complexity took over, the final entry shows what happens when overbuilding becomes legendary. Before we reveal the final truck, subscribe now so you never miss lists like this, where durability matters more than hype, trends fade fast, and the difference between owning and constantly repairing a truck becomes painfully clear over time. Today, Toyota Tundra. At number 1 is a first-generation full-size truck powered by a 4.7-liter V8 that didn't aim to dominate headlines but quietly redefined expectations. It was born during a time when its maker still had something to prove in the full-size segment, and that drive shaped every engineering decision that followed. There was an almost obsessive dedication to over-engineering in the 4.7-liter V8. Internal components were sized with excess capacity. Cooling systems were designed to handle extreme heat without complaint. Compression ratios stayed conservative. Power delivery remained smooth and predictable. This engine was never stressed in factory form, and that margin became its defining trait. Instead of chasing output, it chased stability, and stability ages exceptionally well. That philosophy translated into real-world results that border on unbelievable until you see them repeatedly. First-generation Tundras, crossing 300,000 miles, are common enough to feel routine. Examples pushing beyond 400,000 miles exist without fanfare, still starting daily, still hauling, still functioning as transportation rather than conversation pieces. These outcomes are not tied to perfect maintenance histories. They appear even when care has been ordinary, which is the clearest indicator of mechanical forgiveness. The surrounding platform reinforces the same intent. The frame is robust, without unnecessary complexity. Suspension components favor durability over refinement. Steering systems resist wear rather than chase precision. Drivetrain components were selected to tolerate sustained use, not brief demonstrations. Everything feels slightly underworked, as if the truck is always operating below its maximum capacity. That sensation does not fade with age. It becomes more noticeable. This truck inspires a rare kind of calm. There is no second guessing a noise. No hesitation during startup, no creeping sense that something unseen is waiting to fail. Confidence replaces vigilance. That emotional shift matters more than comfort features or interior finishes. When a vehicle stops demanding attention, it stops generating stress. That absence of stress is a powerful form of value. Market behavior confirms the mechanical story. First-generation Tundras resist depreciation in a way few full-size trucks manage. Even high-mileage examples retain demand because the underlying trust remains intact. When they leave circulation, it is more often due to corrosion or collision than mechanical collapse. That pattern is difficult to fake. Markets reward results, not reputations, and this truck earned both. Power delivery is quietly effective. The V8 produces smooth, consistent torque without peaks or theatrics, making acceleration feel measured rather than aggressive. Highway driving stays calm and composed. Loads remain well within comfortable limits, avoiding unnecessary strain on components. The drivetrain operates in balance, never seeming to work against itself. That cohesion helps protect bearings, seals, and gears over time, minimizing the cumulative wear that can shorten overall lifespan. Maintenance behavior reinforces the theme. Oil changes, cooling system service, and basic wear items dominate ownership costs. Failures tend to be isolated and understandable. Electronics exist, but they do not control the experience. Diagnostics remain straightforward. Repairs follow logic instead of puzzles. That simplicity keeps long-term ownership predictable, even as mileage climbs far beyond expectations. Timing played a critical role. This truck matured before cylinder deactivation systems complicated valve trains. It arrived before turbocharging reshaped full-size trucks. It existed before software integration multiplied failure points across subsystems. Fewer systems meant fewer interactions. Fewer interactions meant fewer surprises. Over time, that restraint compounded into reliability that feels almost unfair compared to modern alternatives. And with the countdown complete, the real question becomes how many modern trucks will still be standing when these ones finally decide to rest. If this list helped you rethink what durability really looks like, hit like so more people see it, subscribe for more breakdowns like this, and drop a comment with the truck you trust most to last.